Lizzie, 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 Lizzie!
Gordo's so wise beyond his years.
Gordo has left the building.
What have you got all over your new cargo pants?
Ethan needs hair scrunchies. Hey Team Duff, it's Whitt. Thanks so much for listening to Duff Enough, the ultimate Hilary Duff fan podcast. This show is a celebration of the life and career of actress, singer, mother, and all-around icon, Hilary Duff. And joining me now is a longtime friend of mine. I call her Hollister. Her name is Ally Hollis. Ally, welcome to Duff Enough.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Whitt.
Of course. And, I was just kind of like going through my friends list of like, who could be on this show? And I was like, I wonder if Ally would be interested. And then I remembered like a birthday present you gave me one time that was Hilary Duff related.
This was an amazing gift. I made Whitt an entire Hilary Duff scrapbook.
You did, and it was so good.
I worked on it for forever. I cut stuff out of magazines. I spent so much time collecting stuff, but I really do think about that all the time. It's like one of the gold standards that I put up against gifts that I give these days.
And this was like middle school. So this was pre Pinterest and printing everything off online. So you literally did find, those J14 magazines and cut everything out. And it was amazing. I still have it.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
I'll have to take some pictures and post on the Duff Enough social media so that listeners can see what we're talking about. So.
Of course.
But yes, I did want to have you on. I would call you, you're a casual Hilary fan. You loved Lizzie McGuire.
Yeah, I really related to Lizzie McGuire when I was younger and loved the Lizzie McGuire movie. Still one of my all-time favorite soundtracks. And I would say I'm a casual fan as well. I'd say that's right.
I do have 3 questions that I ask all of my new guests. First question, what is your favorite Hilary Duff movie?
Definitely A Cinderella Story, hands down. I still watch that movie all the time. It's like one of those comfort movies to me, like when you're having a bad day or you just don't know what to watch. It's one of those movies that I can watch over and over and over again, and it never gets old.
I love it. Okay, next question. What is your favorite Hilary Duff song?
Why Not? That is just such a jam. I was literally sitting in my office earlier, jamming out to that song. But I think a close second that I also have to mention is Anywhere But Here.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
I almost couldn't pick between them.
And final question, do you have a favorite episode of Lizzie McGuire?
The Monte Carlo episode, where they I love a good heist storyline. And that one really sticks out in my memory. I need to go and rewatch it because I feel like that's the episode that I can remember the most about just because I loved it so much. I can't remember what this one is called, but it's the one where they do a murder mystery dinner. That one is also really good and sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, that one is called Clueless. So
I love that you know that.
Well, I looked it up, but yeah. Well, today, Ally, we are going to be looking at episodes 16 through 20 of season 1. And some of these were super memorable. I definitely remembered the handcuff one and the rated R movie. I also remembered Educating Ethan, and we'll talk about that. That's the last one. But okay, are you ready to jump into this?
I think I am.
All right, let's do it.
Throw on some low-rise jeans and toss in that butterfly hair clip. It's time for Let's Talk Lizzie.
So the first episode is called Obsession, and it premiered on June 29th, 2001. And so this episode is about Lizzie being obsessed with going green and making the earth a better place, which, I was kind of reading into that as kids recycle and,
recycling, and this is how you recycle, and this is why you should. I feel like it was a really big trend around that time.
No, 100%. And I remember Save the Whales was a big thing. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think it's so funny. One of the best little shots, I think, is Lizzie cutting up the plastic that goes around the cans that you get on 6-packs or whatever, because I remember that so well. I used to insist to my parents that we had to cut up our little 6-pack rings because otherwise, a little dolphin or a little turtle was going to get, hung up in it. And that made me so sad. And that really jumped out at me because that was totally something that I also did.
Yeah. When this episode begins, Lizzie and Miranda are actually doing a food drive at school. So it's not recycling when they start, but basically Lizzie's like loving the feeling of what it feels like, you know, to do good and give back and that sort of thing. The teacher actually encourages them to like take on another project. And so that's when she decides she's going to do this recycling thing with Miranda. And I'll mention the B storylines here. Matt, of course, always has a little B storyline, but in this one, Gordo gets his own story too. And so Matt has actually been made the hall monitor, and he's embarrassed about it for a little bit. And Gordo, he's doing the Science Olympics, which I'm like, what the heck, Gordo? But anyway, so that's what's going on for them here. As the episode goes on, we see like all three of these characters, so Lizzie, Matt, and Gordo, they become obsessed with what they're doing. So the title really works. Lizzie becomes obsessed with recycling. Matt ends up liking being the hall monitor, and he loves writing people up for like the most ridiculous stuff, and he takes it very seriously. And then Gordo is so dedicated to winning the Science Olympics and beating freaking Larry Tudgman that he just doesn't sleep.
I think it's hilarious that the only two people in the whole school competing in the Science Olympics seem to be every year just Gordo and Tudgman. I also completely forgot about Tudgman. When he came up on screen, I was like, oh my gosh. I don't know how I forgot about that shirt. He wears the same shirt all the time, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Lizzie, she wants to start recycling at home. And, you know, we were talking about how this episode probably wanted to encourage kids to go green. But some of the stuff Lizzie does, I mean, she's like turning off the water while her mom is trying to like fix dinner. And I'm like, Lizzie, what are you doing? Because she's saying she wants to, you know, conserve like a resource or whatever.
Yeah, Lizzie, do you really want to eat dirty green beans?
She snaps at them even for not separating the paper and the plastic. And there was this great one-liner with her dad where, you know, she gets sassy with him and he's like, I think you need to recycle your attitude, young lady. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Snap.
And so then, just to take things to the next level, while Lizzie is at the Digital Bean with Miranda, they're having some burgers. And Parker McKenzie, who she's a little bit of a recurring character, but she comes over and she's, you know, complimenting Lizzie on what she's doing. But then she sees Lizzie is having a burger and she's like, you're a meat eater? How can you be a meat eater? And then Lizzie's like, I think I just became a vegetarian. And we get this great moment later when Miranda shows up wearing a leather jacket. I'm sorry, that had to have been pleather. Let's be honest.
It was baby blue. There's no way.
And Lizzie was like, that comes from a cow. I don't eat meat. And Miranda responds, her response was, then don't eat my jacket. Which was so good. So they have a fight. Seems to happen a lot. I loved the scene between Gordo and Tudgman where they're like standing at opposite ends of the hallway and Western music playing in the background and a tumbleweed rolls across the hallway. That's so good. I loved it.
It is great. And one of the things that really stuck out to me, this was obviously the first episode that I rewatched, and it really surprised me how much humor there is for adults.
No, for sure.
Little things like the tumbleweed, like I'm sure that went over my head. And there's also a line that's a callback to Airplane, the 80s movie, where someone says, don't call me Shirley, which is like a pretty common joke. Like you see it all the time in TV, but it's a joke from Airplane, which is totally not something that kids would get. I just found it really kind of fun that there is so much humor for the adults that are being kind of forced to watch this show with their kids.
And there are so many great pop culture references. And I'm glad that you brought that one up. That's actually a moment where, like, Matt, as the hall monitor, has written up his teacher, and the teacher's like, Shirley, you're joking or something. He's like, don't call me Shirley. So, yes, I'm glad that you brought that up. So the come to Jesus moment of this episode, you know, every episode there's like a lesson learned and we get kind of the Full House music in the background.
Sure.
And the parents like tell Lizzie what's going on. So in this episode, Lizzie's parents, they're like, you know, we're proud of you, Lizzie, but you need to relax. You need to take care of yourself and then you can work on saving the world, but you can't do it on your own and you need to focus on one thing. She kind of takes in the advice and she decides to go back to school and watch Gordo in the competition with Miranda and make up and apologize, which is great. But Gordo's final little competition. So he and Larry were tied. I think Gordo won the paper airplane contest. Tudgman won the egg drop contest. So this last little competition was a bike competition. Okay, I had to like rewind this a little bit to figure out what was going on because apparently this was about like wind resistance and aerodynamics and that sort of thing. That's how it was scientific. Like, they weren't actually pedaling the bikes, and you weren't supposed to go over the finish line. It was weird.
So it was whoever crossed the finish line last who won. So you had to be really cognizant of like your wind resistance, and you obviously have to keep up some motion to keep upright and keep the bike going, but you had to kind of figure out how to go the slowest while still keeping your bike upright.
We got to talk about his Elvis costume, because he does show up for this bike competition with the wig and the outfit, and Larry Touchman is like, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm the king, baby." And it's just like, oh, Gordo. When the competition gets started, Gordo's technically winning at first, but, he's been so tired and sleep deprived this whole time. Like, he hasn't been sleeping. And so at the very end, he like falls over and he's disqualified. And Miranda has a great line. She's like, "Gordo has left the building." And I mean, there you go.
There's so many good one-liners.
But yeah, in the end, everything works out, and Lizzie, she apologizes to Miranda and Gordo, and she says she's going to pick one thing, and she actually says she's going to work for like dog shelters, so I love that. And Miranda says she's actually going to try to keep up recycling a little bit, and Gordo, says he regrets staying up all night. And at the very end, we see Tudgman like ride by on his bike, and he's like teasing Gordo, and then he hits a pole or something, and that's kind of the end of the episode. But all's well and ends well. Matt learned his lesson too, and in 23 minutes, we have a great lesson learned in a Lizzie episode. So there we go.
One thing I will say that I also forgot about is the bloopers at the end of each episode, which are amazing. Definitely one of my favorite parts.
So the next episode here is called Sibling Bonds, and it premiered on August 3rd, 2001. This one, super memorable, and it's where Matt and Lizzie get handcuffed together. But the storyline is that Matt's going to like be a magician, and he's doing all these magic tricks, and he's getting on Lizzie's nerves. And they have a big fight at the beginning of this episode. And I have to say, Lizzie, she's very mean to Matt.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously for this one, like, it works for the storyline, but like, dang.
She calls him Cactus Head. I just think that is an amazing insult.
Yes, because he has like the spiky hair.
Yeah.
They did have great insults towards each other. And there's one part even where like I was like, "Matt, you just crossed the line." And it might not even fly these days, but he said something about like she stepped on his toe, and he's like, "Well, you're so heavy," or something.
I know.
Oh my word. But they have this big fight at the beginning because he's getting on her nerves with his magic tricks. And the parents, like, kind of confront them, and they're like, "You guys need to start getting along," and all that. So a little bit of a, I guess, foreshadowing what's to come there, maybe. When we go to school in this episode, I think this is where we sort of start seeing Ethan Kraft a little bit more as like the love interest. Now, you haven't watched the other episodes prior to this, but at the beginning of the series, he was more of the bully figure, and Danny Kessler was the love interest, but we lose Danny Kessler a few episodes in. What ends up happening here is that there is going to be a charity drive at like this golf course or this country club place. And so Mr. Escobar is encouraging his students to like go and participate. And there's going to be a mini golf tournament. And it's funny because Lizzie's not really interested. But then Ethan says, "I'm going to do it. I'll do the mini golf." And Lizzie's like, I'm in because she wants to, impress Ethan. Here's a note I made though. This episode, Lizzie has like the red hair streaks, which that's so iconic. I mean, so Lizzie.
I was always so jealous of that. I always wanted like pink or purple hair streaks. That was one of my most coveted things about Lizzie's style, I think, was her and Miranda's colored hair and how it was like always different.
Heading back home, Lizzie is all about, this charity thing, and she's going to spend time with Ethan, but Matt is still doing his little magic tricks, and he actually handcuffs them together. And then, his trick doesn't work. Like, the handcuffs don't break apart or whatever. And then he can't find the key. Well, Joe and Sam, the parents, they see the key, and Joe gets it, and she decides, the parents decide, okay, we're going to use they love some, like, reverse psychology and all this stuff. And they decide they're going to, hide the key and just make Matt and Lizzie bond as a brother and sister, because as we remember, they had that big fight. Well, Matt and Lizzie are like looking everywhere for the key, and Sam acts like he, went to the magic store to find a copy key or whatever, and then he comes back and he's like, "Oh, they didn't have it, or they were closed or something." All right, here's another note I made. One thing about Lizzie McGuire is that we never really get a sense of like where the show takes place, like where in the country they are. And that's something that I've been a little confused by with this reboot that they're doing because Lizzie's going to go to New York. And in an interview, Hilary was like, at some point her character's going to come back to LA. And I'm like, wait a minute, we never really knew where Lizzie lived. I wrote down where her dad said, there's a store in Stanton where he'll go to, like a magic store. And there is a Stanton right outside of LA. So maybe. I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. Little side note, I guess, but maybe relevant later on.
I feel like it always had a more like suburb, middle America vibe.
Absolutely. Like that's what I thought. So Lizzie ends up having to go to the golf course or the country club with Matt. They're handcuffed together. And she hides Matt when Ethan comes over. She hides him in a photo booth. You remember one of those photo booths that were like in the mall and they would put a little border around it? You remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you could like pick the border. It could like say something. It could be in color or in black and white or in sepia. So fun.
But Lizzie, she hides Matt in there. And so her arm is, covered up by this curtain in the photo booth. And Ethan offers her some popcorn. And Lizzie's like, no, I don't want it. But Matt sticks out his hand and starts stuffing Lizzie's face with the popcorn. So good. And then we see him like messing with her face while Ethan's talking to her. And of course, Kate comes up and, offers him a bottled water. And she's like, I'm going to come cheer you on at the tournament. And Lizzie says she'll be there later or whatever. So,
okay. So one of the funniest things about the episode, and I think the show is self-aware about this, is that they're just playing mini golf, but everyone's treating it really seriously. Like it's a serious round of golf and Gordo's being the announcer, but it's literally just mini golf.
Very self-aware for sure.
Yeah, I think that's one of the funniest things about the episode, but I think the show meant for it to be funny.
We see Matt's bully show up at one point. And so then, Lizzie's questioning, like, who is this kid and why is he picking on you? So we'll see what happens with that. And you mentioned about Gordo being the tournament announcer. Okay, this part made me laugh so hard because Gordo is getting super bored and he starts saying, like, dramatic stuff is happening. And he's like, King Tut is coming back from the dead and the sky is falling. And people in other parts of the golf course are hearing this, and there's like this little kid and he like climbs under a table. I was cracking up at that.
It's like a total like War of the Worlds like radio show callback. It's so good.
It is. We get a little montage at one point and we see Lizzie like standing outside the men's bathroom. And that's one thing I was like, how are they going to address that? Because at some point, like they've got to go to the bathroom and they are literally like attached to each other. So I guess Matt was able to like figure that out. But Lizzie's standing outside and Matt's inside. And I don't know. That was weird. But anyway. Throughout the episode, Matt is still getting picked on by this bully. And then the bully trips Matt and Lizzie. And of course, they both fall down because they're, handcuffed. And then Lizzie like goes off on this bully. And she went off. And I love the little sound effects in the show. But there's a great one where she like gives this bully a look and she turns her head and there's a growl sound and he just like runs off. I loved that.
The sound cues are so good. They're so fun. But that growling sound when she like cocks her head just a little bit is honestly amazing. Cinematic genius.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I love using that GIF on Twitter or something. So then we get this really sweet moment where Lizzie, she's telling Matt like she's the only one who gets to mess with him. And then they apologize to each other. And, we see that they are learning a lesson that they should try to be nicer. And I love that, like, Matt gets to kind of help Lizzie out, too, because Kate walks by and she's like, oh, Lizzie, I heard you were wearing your little brother as a charm bracelet. And Matt does a magic trick on Kate. And he, like, pulls this, like, fake can of nuts out of his pocket, and Kate opens it and it pops out and she falls into the pond. Let's let Kate have it for a moment.
I love how dramatic that was. There was like a triple shot of that and then like fake screen. It was just so dramatic. It was so over the top. I loved it so much.
Even more dramatic though is when Sam shows up with the keys and he tosses it to Matt and Lizzie. And we get like this football music and like it's all going down. And Lizzie catches it and then they're free and they, celebrate, still slow-mo. That was great. That was great.
I just love how much fun the production of this show was. Like it's really different from other stuff that you see kind of stylistically.
For sure. I mean, it has a very distinct style, no question. And I hope that they kind of carry that on with the reboot. So we'll see. At the very end, to kind of tie a little bow on everything, Ethan invites Lizzie to go out for pizza, which is, her dream. But Matt is actually getting bullied again. So she tells Ethan she's got to go take care of a little situation. And she runs off and scares the bully away. And then at the very end, we see Matt's bully handcuffed to a tiki wall or something, which, that was a little silly at the end, but whatever.
So I watched this episode with my little sister.
Aww.
I know, isn't that so cute? I had her over and we watched a couple of these episodes together. And it was interesting to have her with me watching them because she is 5 years younger than me. And so it was like she was seeing it for the first time. And that was really fun. But it was also especially fun to watch this episode together because since we're so far apart, we used to fight like cats and dogs. I'm sure you remember Whitt.
A little bit.
For it to kind of be like that old saying that you can pick on your sibling, but nobody else can, which is totally the truth. If anyone had ever picked on Sarah like that, I would have totally done the Lizzie lion growl.
I love it. The next episode here is called Rated Argh. Argh. Okay. And it aired on August 10th, 2001. So it starts off and we have this great moment, and I remember to this. So Ethan is supposed to be giving Lizzie CPR in class with Coach Kelly. Love her. So when Ethan can't figure it out, Coach Kelly calls on Larry to do it instead. So Larry gives Lizzie mouth to mouth, and it's just gross. And everybody, starts making fun of Lizzie, and they're teasing her for kissing Tudgman. But what it kind of leads to is this great moment where Lizzie, she questions why they have to learn CPR and the Heimlich maneuver. And she's like, we learn all these things that aren't even useful, And then, of course, it's like, oh, okay, something's going to happen later. And, of course, we know it's going to happen. Gordo shows up and he's saying that, he, Lizzie, and Miranda are the only people in school who haven't seen a new R-rated movie. And it's called Vesuvius, The Eruption, and it stars Ben Affleck. And there's a moment later where Tudgman is in the hallway, and this definitely, I'm surprised this made it into a Disney show, but he's like, Vesuvius is even better than Star Wars, but he's watching it for the slave girls or something. And I'm like, oh, what? Did we just say that?
I was not. Okay, so Tudgman had a lot of weird, inappropriate energy in this episode, and I was not having it.
Again, that would not fly today. I do want to mention Matt's storyline in this episode. He is volunteering, or he wants his parents to volunteer to make a booth at the school carnival. And I love how Jo, at first she doesn't want to do it, but then she's interested because she wants to do a better job than this other kid's mom.
It makes me feel really old to say this, but some of my favorite storylines and some of my favorite conversations and funny moments are between the parents.
Yeah.
I really relate to the parents, and I'm ashamed to say that.
Don't be ashamed.
I think they're hilarious.
They are. And, I remembered them as being so goofy, and they are goofy, but, I'm relating to them now. So,
My favorite quote of the episode goes to Jo, Lizzie's mom. Matt comes in and she goes, "What have you got all over your new cargo pants?" What a mid-2000s line, your cargo pants.
Oh my gosh, that's good. So then, she decides, or she suggests that they're going to do a Velcro wall for the booth. And so that's kind of what's happening with Matt in this episode. They're, making this wall. So Lizzie, Miranda, and Gordo, the three amigos, they decide to tell their parents they're going to go play mini golf instead of, going to a movie. But what they're actually going to do is they're going to go to the movie and they're going to try to sneak in. But first, they actually try to go up to the ticket booth and pretend, to be 18. I was cracking up at that part because they go up there and Gordo's like, I have a fiance. Miranda said she's working part-time at a law firm and her college professor wants her to watch the movie.
That was the best. That was the best scene in the episode, I thought. I was actually legitimately cracking up too. And then Lizzie almost gets away with it. And then she's like, don't you have an under 14 discount? Oh, so good.
Yes. She was like, $7.50 each. And I was like, oh my goodness, that ticket price is amazing.
I know. Where's that movie theater?
They decide to sneak into the movie and they blend in with people who are walking out. And so they're saying all these lines about how much they like the movie, to, pretending like they just saw it to blend in. And Lizzie goes, I like the volcano. And little animated Lizzie's like, what? I like volcanoes. Or volcanoes are cool or something. So... And then Lizzie buys a lot at the concession stands because she feels guilty for not buying a ticket. And that is so in character because throughout the series, we see Lizzie feeling guilty for stuff all the time. So I appreciated that. While she is at the concession stand line, this guy starts choking behind her. And these two guys, like, they appear throughout the show, like, randomly all the time. And it seems like they're always playing different characters. Yeah. There they are, and this guy is choking, and he's choking on, like, a gumball. And Lizzie, of course, knows, CPR, the Heimlich maneuver. So she goes and gives the guy the Heimlich. The gumball flies out of his mouth and lands into Miranda's drink. Like, she has, like, a cup of soda. And then Gordo doesn't even notice, and he drinks out of it, which is, kind of funny. Then Lizzie says, something I learned in school actually paid off. And it's like, oh, okay, well, there we go. So she saved this guy from choking. She gets interviewed on the news. Then they realize that their parents are going to see them on the news at the movies, going to watch Vesuvius, the eruption, which, oh my goodness, a freak out moment. So they end up not going to the movie. They've got to go home and make sure that Lizzie's parents don't watch the news. Well, turns out the movie theater has already called Lizzie's parents and, congratulated them and said thank you, and they're going to give them free tickets and all this stuff. And at first the parents are like, oh, we're so proud of Lizzie. And then they realize that Lizzie lied. And so when the kids get home, the parents already know what they're doing. And so the parents are like, we got to turn on the news. And so it builds up. And there was also a funny moment where, they're making excuses and, oh, Lizzie knocked over a lamp as a distraction. So anyway, the kids finally catch on. The parents kind of let on that they know. So that was, it was fun, and they get grounded, of course. And I wrote down here that we also hear Miranda say that her full name is Miranda Isabella Sanchez. So yeah, that was just something that I noticed and I didn't remember. So anyway, at the end of the episode, we see that Lizzie gets grounded, but she goes into the backyard and they are working on Matt's, Velcro wall for the carnival. And Lizzie, she decides she wants to try it. Well, Sam is actually working on it, and Lizzie doesn't hear him say, hold on a second. So she goes and jumps on this wall and, knocks it over, and Sam's behind it, and he falls down. And it's so funny because any, Pratt fall or anything with Lizzie like that is so good. And I loved that one for sure.
What do you think the lesson for this episode was? I was kind of a little torn. This one's a little more ambiguous because it's yes, they did something that they weren't supposed to do, but something good came out of it, but then they were still punished because they did something they weren't supposed to do. I don't know.
I think also parents will always find out,
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe. Next episode is called Gordo and the Girl, and it premiered on August 17th, 2001. And so this episode, it guest stars, well, I guess it was a guest star, but Kyla Pratt from the Proud family. She was the voice of Penny Proud, so a fellow Disney Channel star back in the day here. And she played Brooke Baker, who Gordo dates in the episode. And yeah, we start off the show and Lizzie and Miranda run into Brooke and Gordo together at the Digital Bean. Love the Digital Bean. And they kiss. And I'm just like, whoa, because this was a kiss.
I know. I had the same reaction. I was like, whoa. I mean, it wasn't just a peck, which is what you normally get in kids shows like that. You just kind of get a little peck on the lips. I mean, this was a kiss. I was shocked.
I kind of was too. And they did several little shots of it,
Mm-hmm.
There's a song playing in the background at the beginning, and I was like, wait a minute, I know this song. Is this a Christina Aguilera song? It's Jessica Simpson, Irresistible. So, hey, Jessica Simpson, when she was a singer. But Lizzie and Miranda, of course, they catch Gordo on this date, and he had actually told them that he was going to be spending the day with his dad. So it's ooh, Gordo lied, and who is this girl? Miranda and Lizzie, they don't go confront him, actually, in that moment. But at school, the next day or whatever, Lizzie, she's with Gordo in science class. They're dissecting an octopus, which I was like, okay.
I hated the octopus. I'm going to say it.
Yeah, that was gross. It was gross. But Gordo gets pulled away by Brooke in class. And so Lizzie's like, does he really think we're not noticing what's going on? And there's a moment where Miranda and Lizzie are talking, and Lizzie's she's saying that it's hard to imagine that Gordo is someone's boyfriend. I've been trying to figure out, when did we start seeing sort of this chemistry between Gordo and Lizzie? Because it definitely becomes more apparent in season 2, but there are hints of it in season 1, and this is one of them, I guess.
Yeah, I wondered the same thing, especially when Lizzie thinks about it for a second, and then she goes, gross, and I was like, Lizzie.
Mm-hmm. Lizzie gets it in her head, though, that Brooke is using Gordo, I guess, for help in school or or something. Brooke is apparently this popular girl, and they're like, why is Gordo with Brooke? You know, she's popular and she was actually friends with Claire instead of Kate. I don't know why Kate wasn't in this episode, but anyway. So they confront Gordo, and he gets upset because, you know, Lizzie basically says, you know, this girl might be using you. And he's like, what? You know, she likes me, and, you know, you can't believe that, then that's your problem. So we get a fight.
So many fights in these episodes, I feel like.
I know. Jumping over to Matt's B storyline here for a second. In this episode, he was having some trouble with math, and his dad actually helps him like figure out percentages and stuff. And so he learns to start betting. He bets with people. He even bets with his dad, but he's betting on things that are like inevitable things that would happen. And he calls it odds and percentages. And so he's kind of like taking things away from people at school, and Lanny's helping. And so that's what's going on with Matt in this episode.
Great storyline. I love how Matt is literally in a kid's show running a gambling ring. That's so funny.
Oh, yeah.
I love Lanny. He is one of my favorite, more minor characters, and I'm so glad that I got to see an episode that Lanny was in, because I don't know why, but I love that character.
Back to Lizzie's story, she and Miranda overhear Claire say that Brooke has a hot date, and so they don't think it's Gordo. They think that, like, Brooke is, like, two-timing Gordo, and they decide they're going to go spy on this date. Which this reminded me of That's So Raven, because we didn't really get a lot of antics like that on Lizzie McGuire. You know, we did more so on That's So Raven. So this was kind of like, you know, an I Love Lucy, That's So Raven little moment for me. And I guess I should say, you know, to explain that, like when they go to the restaurant, Miranda dresses up as a boy and pretends to be Lizzie's date. And there was this moment where they're trying to figure out who Brooke is there on the date with, because they can't tell it's Gordo at first. And the boy goes into the bathroom, and Lizzie's like, Miranda, follow him in there. And the line that Miranda says, she's like, I can't go in there because they have those weird fountain thingies on the wall. And I loved that. That
was the funniest moment for me. And right before she goes into the bathroom, she makes just the most horrified face, and she like pinches her nose. It's so funny.
It is. And Lelaine is so good. Like her facial expressions.
Yeah.
As it turns out, Brooke's date is Gordo, and we get to see a little bit of their date, and like she's wanting to spend more time with Gordo, and he's not really into that. Also, she has like string cheese on her lip, which was kind of odd because they never really did anything with that. But yeah, so we see that things aren't going so great for them. But meanwhile, Lizzie and Miranda get stuck at the restaurant because their table is ready. They were going to try to leave, and they're like hiding from Gordo with menus. And when they try to, you know, make a run for it, they run into the waiter with all the food, and they get spaghetti all over them, and Gordo and Brooke see and all that. And so it's just like, oh, of course. So, you know, little sitcom moment for sure. And Gordo's, you know, still mad at them for spying on him and whatnot. I do want to talk about Kyla Pratt for a second, because obviously she was kind of a guest star, but she really, like, the character, there wasn't much to it, and she honestly didn't have that many lines. But, you know, shout out to Disney. They did like an interracial couple there and all that. So, you know.
Yeah, I think that was great. And it was very normal. Like, it wasn't really a thing. And I think it was also great that, you know, she was a popular girl, but they didn't go in the direction of the storyline being like, she's using Gordo to get better grades, or she's using him for whatever. I mean, she really just did legitimately like him. And I thought that was a really like refreshing way for them to go, that it was just, you know, she liked him and they were dating.
Yeah. Before we get to the end and how things get fixed, I'll talk about Matt's storyline here. So his mom, you know, figures out what he's doing. She makes him give back all the stuff that he has gambled away from people, including a puppy, which I was like, okay. But yeah, and I love the line where she was like, this was a zero spread situation and you are 100% busted, because he was doing all the like the percentages and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How we solve the situation with Lizzie, Miranda, and Gordo. You know, Lizzie and Miranda, they think they have ruined their friendship with Gordo. But Gordo shows up and, you know, he says what they did was low, but they did it because they cared a lot about him, which was sweet. And he actually tells them that he broke up with Brooke. He was liking the idea of having a girlfriend better than actually having one, and he wasn't ready for that commitment. And I was just like, you are 13, but okay.
Gordo's so wise beyond his years.
They make up, and Gordo tells them that he missed them, and, you know, all's well and ends well. But there's a great animated Lizzie line, and she's like, I knew he'd come back. They always do. Animated Lizzie was calling out the male population right there.
Animated Lizzie tells it like it is.
She does.
She really does.
And at the very end, they ask Gordo how the kissing was. And he's like, I don't kiss and tell, which, you know, that was a little cliche. But they like do little kissy noises to his face. And I thought that was super cute.
Yeah, that was really cute. Also, Gordo's line where he's like, look, kissing was cool. That just made me crack up so hard.
I know. Just very nonchalant.
Like, my adult self was like, middle school is too young to be kissing. Like, ugh, I don't know about that. And then I was thinking about it and I was like, yeah, I definitely kissed a boy in middle school too. I guess maybe it's not too young. I don't know.
Ooh, Ally.
I don't kiss and tell, just like Gordo.
Right. We're coming up on our last episode here, and I actually did remember this one too, and there's one specific reason why. But this is called Educating Ethan. It premiered on July 18th. Wait, that can't be right. It has this one listed as July, but I think maybe it meant August 18th, 2001. I don't know. Anyway, in this episode, Gordo, it starts out, he's trying to earn money for a new stereo, which, again, so 2000s. Did you have a stereo, Ally? Like, not just a boombox.
So what I had was a karaoke machine.
I had one of those too.
Yeah, that I also used like a stereo because it would just play regular CDs too, you know?
Yeah.
I used to take it outside, like on an extension cord and like blast the Lizzie McGuire movie soundtrack and like dance along to it and sing. And my karaoke machine was my stereo.
I didn't have a stereo. My sisters had a stereo, and it was in their room, and I would use it from time to time, but it was really complicated because it was like a 3-disc situation, and it would like rotate, and I feel like I would mess it up sometimes.
Yeah,
but
my dad actually had like a legit stereo, and I was not allowed to touch it, so.
I'm having like a flashback of my sister's room, the lava lamp and the candles and all that. Anyway.
Love it.
So 90s. All right. Back to the story here. He's trying to earn money for a new stereo. At first, he's like auctioning off his lunch, but Lizzie and Miranda are like, you should tutor people. You know, you're good at math and whatnot. So Gordo agrees to the idea, and he puts out these flyers, which this cracked me up because nowadays we're so like, you know, branding and graphic design is like so important for any sort of marketing situation. And he puts out these flyers that he like did handwritten on like loose leaf paper. Cracked up at that. And the handwriting was terrible. But anyway, they're like, who would respond to this? But then Ethan Kraft shows up and it's like, of course. And so Gordo is going to tutor Ethan. And that's kind of where we go with this episode. Ethan is terrible at math, as one would expect. But Lizzie and Miranda love Ethan and they're super excited about Gordo being his tutor. So that's kind of the setup for their story. Over to Matt's story really quick. I didn't really love Matt's plot in this episode. It was probably like my least favorite of these. But he and his friend Oscar, who oddly looks a lot like the bully in the handcuff episode.
Oh.
Yeah. They're bored and Matt's parents are like, you should go help out people in the neighborhood. And then they get this idea to be superheroes, which they're not really being superheroes and like fighting. They think they're fighting crime, but they're actually like not helping people at all, and they're stealing an old lady's groceries, and it's kind of weird. And they get dressed up in these costumes. They're like running like superheroes, and it's a green screen, you can tell.
I was like, couldn't they just have them run outside? Why does it have to be a green screen?
Yeah. Back over to Lizzie. She and Miranda are trying to use Gordo basically to get close to Ethan, and at the Digital Bean, Gordo is trying to do some tutoring, and Lizzie and Miranda are like scooting over their table, and then they knock over some drinks, and they're really just interrupting things. Ethan is trying to learn how to divide fractions, which this totally took me back to like middle school math or high school math, because they explained it really well.
They did, because whenever he was first talking about like trying to divide, I was like, man, I don't remember how to do that at all. And then she explained it, and I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Maybe Lizzie is a good tutor.
It's true. It's true. I do love that Ethan called Gordo, he was like, Professor?
Ethan's slang is too much. Like, literally every sentence he says is so dated to the mid-2000s. It's so funny.
At this time, Gordo, he confronts Miranda and Lizzie, and he's like, you're not really trying to help. You're trying to get with Ethan. And he basically tells them that they're not smart enough to even be helping with tutoring. So what are they doing? And they get mad because they're like, we are smart.
I would have been so mad. And they forgive him kind of quickly and like get over it. And I just want to say, I would not have given up on that grudge so easily.
Lizzie, because she feels bad, and again, Lizzie always, like her conscience, which, the little voice in her head, she always is feeling bad. And so she, again, tries to go and talk to Gordo the next day at school while he's tutoring Ethan. Probably not a smart move, but, he's not having a lot of luck with the tutoring. Like, Ethan's not getting it. And so Lizzie decides to help him. This is why I remembered this episode. And it's because she uses hair scrunchies to explain dividing fractions. And that has always been, like, anytime I hear anything about a hair scrunchie, which isn't often, but if anything ever comes up about a hair scrunchie, it's like, oh, Lizzie McGuire, she used the hair scrunchie to teach Ethan math.
That's so funny. They're coming back, so you're probably hearing about them more.
But she, like, gathers all these hair scrunchies because she's like, Ethan needs hair scrunchies. And all the girls, like, throw their hair scrunchies. And she's saying, like, okay, you got 4 scrunchies. What's 1/2? And he's like, 2. So Ethan then starts to kind of understand how to divide fractions. And he suggests, Lizzie should tutor him instead. But Lizzie's like, no, because she doesn't want to hurt Gordo's feelings anymore. But Ethan actually fails the next quiz that they take in class. So at that point, he's like, Lizzie, I really want you to be my tutor instead. And Lizzie says yes. And I think Gordo, like, said something else mean to Lizzie and Miranda. And so she's like, yeah, I'll help you, Ethan. Also, shout out to Mr. Dig, because he's going to give Ethan a second chance. And so that's when Lizzie is going to help him make a better grade. I made a note about animated Lizzie here because she says, I love the way Ethan says my name. Lizzie, 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 Lizzie.
Yeah, I made that note too. That's so funny.
Tutoring with Lizzie and Ethan at the Digital Bean. Okay, so it's not going too great. Like, Lizzie's getting a little frustrated because he's not getting it. And so she actually has to use cheerleaders who just happen to be at the Digital Bean.
Who are in costume, like in their uniform.
Right. And Gordo's, like, over in the corner too. But she uses the cheerleaders, and it is cute. Like, the cheerleaders, they get in the shapes of, like, the fractions and whatnot, and the multiplication sign and the division sign and all that. So they put little graphics up to sort of show you. Jackson 5 ABC is playing at this moment. That song was on the Lizzie McGuire TV show soundtrack. And at the very end of the little cheerleader sequence, there's this one cheerleader and Ethan's like, Rhonda. And Lizzie gets jealous. And I thought that was funny.
Lizzie is also wearing a great outfit for that scene. She's obviously gotten, like, dressed up in, like, a really great coordinating outfit to go see Ethan. The pants are, like, stretchy, bright pink tie-dye. And we haven't talked a lot about her outfits.
No.
One thing I did notice is Lizzie seems to really have a thing for bandanas. She wears a bandana at least once in every episode we watched, and usually more than once. I used to be so, obviously, just like every other girl, jealous of Lizzie's style.
It was so good, though. Like, that is such a huge part of the show. And obviously, like, I wasn't obsessing over the outfit so much as something that I wanted to wear, but they were, super bright and eye-catching and colorful, and yeah.
The show is so quirky. I feel like the dialogue is quirky. We were talking about the way that it's shot, and the sound cues are really quirky, and the costuming really fits into that kind of quirky vibe as well. I think it all works so well together.
We're getting close to the end here, but, Gordo's watching, and he ends up telling, Lizzie, like, I was wrong. And this is all happening while Ethan is taking his test, and he comes out of the class and he's like, I aced it. And he made a 72.
I also love how it's revealed. He's like, I aced it. And then Lizzie goes, a 72? And then she goes, how can I have a crush on this guy?
I know. It's so good, though. And yeah, and the episode ends with Gordo saying, forget the money. I'm just going to use Lizzie's stereo. And Lizzie's like, you can come over anytime. So again, they always solve the problem at the end of the episode. 23 minutes, and we're good to go.
They've made up.
Final segment here, Allie. It's called Quizzy McGuire, and it's a trivia question segment. So would you like to hit me up with a Hilary Duff trivia question?
Yes, I would. Okay, so I'm taking this very seriously because I really want to stump Whitt. And so I did some research earlier, and you guys wish me luck. Okay. What episode of a kid's animated series is Hilary Duff credited on?
What animated series? What?
It's an animated series for kids, for like little kids.
Oh.
And Hilary Duff.
I know it.
Oh, man.
It's Dora the Explorer.
Ugh.
Yeah. And she sings, and it's like a really weird song. She's like an ice princess or an ice queen. She was kind of a villain.
Yeah, the episode is, I've not seen this.
Oh, I've seen it.
The episode is called Dora's Ice Skating Spectacular, and Hilary Duff played the Ice Witch.
Oh.
So very spooky. Man, I really thought that was my best shot. Can I try again? Can I ask you one more?
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So how much older was Adam Lambert than Hilary Duff when they were filming the series?
Ooh. Well, I want to say he was like 2 years older than them. What? What was he?
He was 3 years older.
Okay.
Yeah, Sarah and I actually figured that one out because we were watching and Sarah goes, how old is Gordo in real life when this is going on? Because you can tell that he's older.
Yeah, but in the second season, they actually look a lot taller than him because they kind of hit that awkward time when the girls are taller than the boys.
Mm-hmm.
He might have just been kind of short, too.
Yeah, I think Adam Lambert is just a little short also.
My trivia question for you is a little more Lizzie related, not so much Hilary Duff, and it's probably just going to be one of those where you just guess. And so yeah, we had Kyla Pratt in one of our episodes. Of course, she was the voice of Penny Proud on The Proud Family.
Mm-hmm.
Which of the following Disney Channel actors, actresses did not have an appearance on Lizzie McGuire? A, Orlando Brown from That's So Raven, Eddie on That's So Raven. B, Craig Anton, who played the dad on Phil of the Future, Lloyd Diffie. C, Phil Lewis, who played Mr. Mosby on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Or D, Brenda Song, who played London Tipton on The Sweet Life.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards A or D, the younger people you mentioned. I'm going to say, ugh.
Do you want me to tell you if one of those is right?
Yeah, let's go 50-50. Is it either A or D?
It is either A or D.
Good. All right. I'm going to say D, Brenda Song, final answer.
You are correct. Brenda Song was not on Lizzie McGuire.
Yes!
And I thought that would be tricky because she was on so many Disney shows and movies before she was London.
Yeah. I just feel like in my mind, she exists so much later in the Disney universe than Lizzie McGuire. I don't know if that's right.
It is right, but also she was on The Ultimate Christmas Present, and that was before Lizzie. She was on Get a Clue with Lindsay Lohan. So she was there.
Love that movie.
She was there, but she was just supporting characters. Would you like for me to tell you what those other actors played?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Orlando Brown, he plays a character who's in a play with Miranda. So not a super important character, but he was in it. And then Phil Diffie's dad, so the dad, Lloyd Diffie from Phil of the Future, he plays the science teacher, Mr. Pettis. And I would never have realized that as a kid. And then Phil Lewis, Mr. Mosby, he played Lizzie's principal on the show.
So much Disney crossover.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Well, Allie, this has been super fun. This has been one of my favorite episodes so far. Oh my goodness. You had lots of great stuff to say.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored.
It's been great talking to you. And, just stay tuned for more Duff Enough.
I will.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Bye. Thanks, Whitt.
And before I wrap things up today, I want to share another edition of From Team Duff with Love, the fans' love letters to our girl, HD.
Hey, this is Joren from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and I'm a really big Hilary Duff fan. It all started with Casper Meets Wendy, and after that, Lizzie McGuire, of course. And I was struggling at my school at the time, and Lizzie and Hilary helped me to be myself for who I am. And Hilary is such a sweetheart, so kind, so lovely, and she gives the best hugs. I met her in 2005 and in 2011. And the last time in 2011, I had an interview with her for an hour in Amsterdam. And it was like a dream come true. It was amazing to get to know her a little bit and to say thank you, for all the things she have done for me in a way. And the music, of course, that also speaks to me. The lyrics, of course. And I love her voice and the acting. I can't really describe it, but she is like a total package celebrity, and most celebrities are fake or not real. Hilary always is herself, and I really respect that about her, and that's why I love her for that, and I always will. And I'm now 31. I'm grateful that Lizzie McGuire comes back in a 30 way. And I will cry for the first episode. I will. And I really hope Hilary comes back for the music, but we will see in the future, hopefully.
And that's all for this episode of Duff Enough. Thanks again for listening. I hope you'll subscribe and stick around for more, because this podcast is what dreams are made of. You can follow along on social media at Duff Enough Pod, and check the description for my socials as well as show guests. And until next time, bye Team Duff.